Welcome to the Young, Dumb, and in Love podcast, where we talk about all things marriage.
Our goal is to help equip you to have a marriage that is better than you have ever imagined by sharing real life experiences, getting into the nitty gritty, and sharing practical ways you can start today. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Young, Dumb, and in Love. After a long summer break, we're finally back here. Are you excited to be back, Brittany?
So excited.
We got lots to talk about. But
Yeah?
I hope your summer was great. I'm glad your kids are back in school.
Not everyone's though.
That's true. That's true. But if your kids are back in school, I bet you, just like us, are breathing and taking a moment just to have some silence and let our minds just shut off for just at least 2 seconds.
I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah, you really
Ever.
don't. That's true. That's true. But I am glad that our kids are back in school because, number one, they're learning. They're around great people, great school.
Number two, someone else is entertaining them.
Somebody else is entertaining them, and we can finally think straight.
It was great though. I mean, summer is super fun, but when you live somewhere hot, like here in Arizona, unless you're swimming, you're not going to go outside.
It's
and
true.
I think that's the hardest part about summer, living in the desert. I love it all year. I mean, I love it even in the summer, but your kids, it's like you have to go to like an indoor thing.
Yes.
Which gets kind of hard, gets kind of expensive.
Yep.
And I'm like, I just want to stay home.
Well, not to mention getting in the car and it's like a million degrees outside. Yeah. So if you do move to Arizona, just know summertime is hot.
But it's really not that bad.
And there is a lot to do. You just have to get out and do it.
You have to go out and do it. Yeah. It's not like, when we lived in Washington, you could just go in the backyard and play.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, your feet are burning because the concrete's hot. But the pool's great.
That's true.
Yeah. We didn't trade it. But
and San Diego is only a few hours away. So if you want to go to the beach, right there. Or even Mexico if you want. But we're not going to do that. So anyways, there's lots to do. I'm just thinking of all the things we could do that we didn't do. Like go to San Diego. There's actually a great hotel. I wanted to go check it out maybe next time. All right. But we are back and we're excited to be here. Hope you guys had a great time this summer. Listen, let's talk about just a little bit of what we've been going through as a family, as a couple. You guys may have been thinking, where are these guys at? They've disappeared from social media. They've disappeared from YouTube, from podcasting, all that kind of stuff. And, sometimes it's on purpose. You just need to physically remove yourself from the things that you're doing just to gather and figure out who you are. And that's healthy. That's a very healthy thing to do. And we're not ashamed to say we're going to be healthy. We're going to make sure that we're taking care of us first above everything else. But Brittany, why don't you share just a little bit of what's been going on in the life of the Garcias?
Oh, okay. Well, why we took a break specifically?
Yeah,
like
let's
that?
go into it. Let's talk about
it. Great. Okay. Well, obviously we love doing the podcast and we believe so much in like healthy marriages. And, to have a healthy marriage, you really have to be healthy on your own too, and that we talk about that all the time. And so it kind of was getting to the point where for me, I was unhealthy. And so it felt fake showing up. And I mean, I could have just been on here and been like, hey, this is what's going on. And that would have been fine because that's my personality. But I needed some space to really like figure out what was going on with me. And, sometimes you just have to take a step back. But I mean, and we've shared a lot about mental health on this podcast. And really, I'm not one to really hold back or be secretive or feel like I can't share. But it also felt a little bit like I wasn't quite ready to share.
For sure.
And that was kind of the other thing is I felt like, okay, if we keep recording, it almost feels like there's this thing that I'm not talking about. And just like my headspace wasn't like right, And so that's a big part of it. And I honestly just couldn't do it. I know that sounds like weird, but couldn't do it.
It takes a lot of,
like it was hard enough to show up just like in life. And so sometimes you have to look at everything that you're doing and go like, something's got to give. And so there was a few things that had to give.
Yeah.
I pretty much didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Except for like get up, do my workout, take care of my kids and take care of my family, which was great. But it was neat. I mean, I can specifically talk about exactly what happened.
For sure.
But you can, if you have anything you
No,
want
I
to
was
say.
just gonna say, and just the fact that I mean, summertime and your kids are home,
I mean,
and you're the
yeah,
great entertainer.
we
You,
didn't really
you change your
do
job. Whew. My lord.
a lot of podcasting over last summer either.
Yeah.
You know, and it was our heart to be more intentional and have more like recorded episodes for this summer, but it just happened to be that I was struggling during that time.
Yeah.
And so we just didn't get able to do it. And then I really did just like, which was great, is I focused so much attention on the girls all summer. I mean, we played, my house was literally like turned upside down. We went swimming, we went to indoor places, we hung out with family. I tried to be really intentional with the girls.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's true. Yeah. But
Yeah.
here we are. We're back.
we're back.
We're making it happen.
Making it happen.
The best thing to do, especially when you're going through mental health issues
Yeah.
and the things that you're walking through, sometimes the best thing for you to do is just go, okay, I'm going to show up.
Yeah.
And you know, we were kind of at that point where it's like, okay, it's time to show up. And here's Brittany just stepping out on the other side and making it happen. So share a little bit more about what's been
Yeah.
happening.
Well, I think we had an episode.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was probably like in February or something, or March. I don't know. I think. And we kind of talked about how hard it had been for me struggling, and kind of like I had taken, stopped taking some medication that I had taken for a long time, and it had some very serious, like, I don't want to say consequences, but side effects of coming off that medication, and kind of just threw me for a tailspin. And so what I did is, you know, I reached out to, went to the doctor. The doctor was like, hey, have you ever actually just like sat down with like a psychiatrist and really looked at like your medication and kind of like been, you know, diagnosed with, you know, anything, like just maybe see if there's something else going on. And I thought, well, maybe it's my hormones. Like I'm going to be 37. Maybe it's, I don't know. Like I just thought like maybe I'm like, I think it's called perimenopause. Like maybe because I've always been like an early bloomer.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm like, maybe I'm going through menopause, maybe this, maybe that. And so I'm like met with my OBGYN, and she's like, could you go and see this psychiatrist? So I'm like, you know, you get to the point where you're like, what do I have to lose? Like I'm kind of in this spot where I'm so frustrated and I feel so defeated that I was like, sure, great. So she gives me this referral, and I call her, and she calls me back, and we're talking. And within 2 minutes of being on the phone, she goes, can I ask you a question? And I'm like, yeah, go shoot. She goes, has anyone ever asked you if you have ADHD, or have you been diagnosed with ADHD? And I was like, no, like, no. And I was actually sitting on this couch, which is kind of funny. It's just on the other side of the room. And I was like, no, but you know, now that you mention it, like I have personally over the last maybe year or so, thought that maybe that was a possibility, but didn't really think much of it.
Just keep going.
Okay. And so she's like, let's meet, you know, can you come to my office? I would love to sit down with you and kind of talk more about stuff. And when I tell you that I was like desperate, like I was not living very well. Like I was riddled with anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I was having a hard time. Like I just couldn't, I had gotten to the point where I was like, this is not like living. Like I am, I struggle with like obsessive thoughts, you know, and like feeling afraid of things and getting really scared and having a hard time like being in public. And it had just gotten bad like to that point again. And so like I could be home, I could take care of my kids, I could do things that like I knew I absolutely had to do and do them fine. Like my kids didn't suffer from it because you know, by the grace of God, I could like lean in and do those things. But like everything else, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. So I go in and I sit down and meet with her, and she's like, okay, you know, I'm pretty like this sounds a lot like this. Can I give you this paper? She's like, because a lot of times women with ADHD don't realize that it's ADHD because we've kind of always thought of it like the hyperactive side of ADHD being physical hyperactivity, you know, bouncing off the walls or, you know, whatever that looks like. And, but it's different in women. And so I was like, sure. Yeah. So she hands me this piece of paper, and it's like front and back, and it's all of these things that she has observed and that she's kind of pulled out and said, like, this is what it looks like to be a woman with ADHD. So I start reading through it, but she's still talking, we're still talking. We're still like
Yeah.
in the meeting. And she's like, and I'm like reading these things, thinking, whoa, right? Like, okay, this like changes so many things. So, I could keep talking.
Well,
all day.
and I'm outside in the car.
Well, he drove me there because it
drove
had
her.
gotten to the point where, I could drive, but I just was like, I don't know.
I just didn't want her to have like a breakdown while she's driving across the town,
Because
So
he
I
knows
drove
like
her.
she's going to tell you something crazy.
I'm in my car. I'm working in my car, just letting her have
Yeah,
her time,
have my
to
time.
have this conversation. She comes out and she's like, her big eyes, and she comes to me and she goes, can you read this paper and kind of see if this reminds you of me? And I read it, and I'm not even kidding, like 99% of it. I was like, this is exactly you. What is this? And she goes, so I think I've been diagnosed with ADHD. And I'm like, no way. Like, in my mind, like my perception of ADHD has been so
absolutely
ruined because of like little kids and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
That I'm just saying, like I see
know.
most of it in like ADHD in young boys, and
Well, and
I've
that's
seen
like the
that.
stigma of
The stigma,
is
exactly.
that like, and it's just So
But she reads me. I read this paper and I'm like, this is 100.
because she said, have your husband read this
Yeah.
because like sometimes you need like an outside perspective, like, and I already knew. I mean, guys, I already knew. And so anyway. So she diagnoses me with ADHD. There's so many different options that we can do, and we'll discuss them, at your next appointment. Great. So, and she had told me like start on this like like this vitamin supplement. So I got to be honest, like at first it was kind of like freeing because it's like all these puzzle pieces like then like made sense. I was like, oh my gosh, like wow, I didn't realize that. And so I kind of take a deep dive because of course then I'm very good at hyper focusing. And like, what is it like to be a woman with ADHD, and kind of start looking at all this stuff. And so at first I was like, oh, this kind of feels like a relief. And then it felt really sad because I was like devastated in a way by it.
So we had a lot of emotion going up and down, and she was all over the place. And as we were dealing with that, it just was like, okay, what is actually happening right now? As her husband, I'm like, what is happening? Because I felt like there was freedom that we felt at first because she was like, oh my gosh, everything makes sense. And then all of a sudden it was like, now she started to just deal with it within her heart and in her mind, and everything started to change right then.
But yes, so at first, there's like this relief, and then after there was like this sadness and like this shame, and just a journey of like, what does this mean? And starting to see like, wow, this isn't something that I try to do. Like, I'm not trying to be like this or whatever. Like, there's this part of me that like, this is how I am, and not in a negative way, you know what I mean? But, and all the things I've learned about ADHD, which this isn't an ADHD podcast, but a lot of my struggles actually came from the fact that I have ADHD and what happens when you leave it untreated or you're not taking care of that side of yourself. Yeah. So,
well, and as a husband in all of this situation, when you have a wife, it can be very frustrating. Like, it can be like, come on, like you got
husband or wife.
Yeah.
Like,
from my side, I'm just, but for me, it was times of very high frustration. And it was just like, what are you doing? What is happening? Why are we walking through, and I'm like, you're doing good. You're making a big deal about nothing, like all these thoughts that go through my head. And
I would definitely not recommend saying you're making a big deal about nothing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In my head, I'm a little smarter than that. Not that I'm perfect, but these thoughts are going through my head, and I just didn't understand. And I would see like the light, and it would be like, oh, she's going to be so good now, and everything's going to be fine, and she's working it out, and then all of a sudden crash. And there was just a lot of ups and downs of looking good, crashing, looking good, crashing. And the best thing for me as a husband to do is just honestly, sometimes like this morning, I just held her for 30 seconds, just squeezed her, held her, just to let her know, like, we're good. Everything's good. No problems right here. If you can just hold on to that moment, everything's going to be good. And I've definitely had my moments where I may have said something or been like frustrated and let it out, or I have a very telling face, and so she's always like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Nothing." And
It's just my face.
it's just the way my
It's
face.
true,
I was
though.
born
Watch
this
his
way.
face. You can see it.
Yeah, I was born this way. But the best thing that I've learned over the years is honestly just sit back, let her vent, let her go through what she's going through, but hey, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
If you just need to let it out and talk about it, I'm not going to try to fix all your problems. I'm not going to try to fix your ADHD because I can't. Like, at the end of the day, I can't. Like, you're the only one who can work on that personally. And so allowing her to go through that has been a long journey, and it's been a long process, but it definitely will keep us in line with each other way more, because I'm not constantly in a way nagging at her like, what's wrong with you? Why are we going through this? What's going on with you?
Well, and I think too, when you I think it's hard because when you have like struggled with mental health or whatever, there's this part of you that is like, no, that's not like real. Like, you want to be like, no, like, this is my identity. And I believe in, obviously being healed and being healthy and being like holistically well, spiritually, mentally, all of that. And so I think what was hard for me is like, just learning about it, figuring out what that really means and what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And then also realizing like, my brain works differently. Like, it actually works differently.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Right. And feeling like, okay, so instead of feeling defeated by that, being like empowered by it and trying to find and like pull out the things about it that are actually positive and that are strengths, because it's really easy, especially for me, because I'm, focused more on like negative things about myself, especially, is like all the things about it that are negative or frustrating or irritating, mostly just to me, like they're frustrating to me. And, yeah. So, I mean, it's been a lot, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I've definitely read a lot of books and a lot of articles
big time,
and listened to a lot of podcasts.
I've never seen her learn something so much in her life. Like, this has been the most learning I've seen you really dive into yourself without it being school and stuff like that. Like, you are really diving in and trying to learn this about yourself and what causes it, how to work through things. Yep. And I'm just like being supportive, just sitting back and supporting as much as possible.
Well, and what's crazy is when she said, hey, if we start working through your ADHD, you'll actually find so much freedom in like OCD, anxiety, and depression. And I thought, oh, nah, I don't know. I mean, why believe the person who went to school to do it, And I was like, I mean, that seems crazy, because I've never had freedom from like my OCD tendencies, or like rumination, or like, thinking constantly about the same thing and not being able to like let it go. And it like does work. And so
but it's a process.
Oh,
it's
it
not
is a
an
process.
Overnight.
Well, and I mean, people have strong feelings about medicine, no medicine. I mean, I am treated for ADHD, so I won't say specifically what it is. It's different than in like typical treatment for ADHD, but I do have ADHD medication for it that I take that has been super helpful.
Yeah. And these are the moments in marriage that I really feel like are defining for who you are as a couple. You can either gather together and work hard to work through the situation that you're in, or you can get frustrated and mad and walk away. And I would say that a lot of marriages end at points like this because of how hard it is.
It's frustrating.
Because how frustrating it is. And and I'll be honest, that wasn't ever a thought, whatsoever. In fact, I reassured you how much I love you and what it means to me to be married to you. And let's be honest, you've even asked me, why are you married to me? Why do you love me? Like, you ask those questions, and for me, I'm like, you're silly. Like, why I love you. Why I'm married to you. But I have chosen to not let this define who you are. It's just what you're walking through.
Right.
I know who you are. I know
Yeah.
what you're defined as, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to always see you for who you truly are, no matter what you're going through. And so when you're walking through hard time like this, man, don't run. Don't let frustration be something that tears apart your marriage because of a situation that you're walking through. Instead, a marriage is a union. It is two people who come together and really decided that we're going to walk through life together, hand in hand, no matter what the situation is, for better or for worse. That's what it's about. And no matter what it is, if you can really take heart of the better and for worse and show up for your spouse and always be there no matter what, you're going to see them come out on the other side, and your marriage will be stronger than it ever was. Yeah. And we have our ups and downs. We have moments where we're like, oh my gosh, marriage is hard, right? But at the end of the day, when we walk through those valleys, we come out stronger. And we push and we climb, and once we get to the mountaintop, we're like, all right, we did it. Let's do it again, because it's going to happen. Right? Something else is going to come our way. Yeah. But how you choose to respond to situations like this is the biggest determiner of what's going to happen in your marriage. And so don't let flight be your go-to, but man, stick with them and do everything that you can to support them and love them. And don't try to fix all their problems. Just listen and just be there for them, be supportive. And how can I serve you today? What can I do to help? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's a very, very important for your marriage to be able to walk through these situations and stay strong.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we talk a lot about this, like that when you struggle, and I do feel like I've come out on the other side of it in so many ways, and I'm starting to be able to be like, okay, I can see like things now in a way more like realistic way. When you have a spouse who allows you like that space, like a grace space is kind of what I call it, like to walk through those things and doesn't push you too hard. Like you want to be like encouraged, but doesn't push too hard, doesn't shame you, because like we always talk about, there's so much shame if you're the one struggling already.
So true.
Like I don't need someone to shame me. I have plentiful shame for myself. And so if you weren't like that, it would be much harder for me to be able to find healing and be able to have that space,
True.
And I don't want it to identify me. Like I don't want to be identified by having mental health struggles, which I feel like there's been seasons where it's like, well, I'm just, here we are again. And it's frustrating, and I talk about like, why? Because it's really not who I am. And I know that. But yeah. Yeah.
Well, if your spouse is going through something like that, let me encourage you one more time. Just show up. Be there for them. Yeah. Always be supportive. Let them know how much you love them, why you love them, for better or for worse. If they say, oh, I don't know why you love me, you should just leave me. Like that's not them speaking. That's just what they're walking through. That's speaking in that moment. And so be supportive. Yeah. Always show up. Don't try to fix their problems. And just look at them in the eye. Sometimes you just need to hold them. Just hold them real tight. And show up for them every single day. The best thing you could do too is say, hey, what can I do to help you? Ask the question. Don't assume. Don't assume that they're fine. Like nothing like that. Just, what can I do to help you? Are you okay? Like ask them those questions. Keep your communication strong. If they freak out or have a moment where, they're like, I don't know what's going on, don't respond back with it. Just, hey, are you okay? Like, what can I do to help you right now? What's really going on? Because it might be a trigger that makes them go off, but it's not what it is at all. It's something way deeper that they're walking through. Yeah. But thank you guys so much for just being a part of Young, Dumb, and Love all this time. And we are going to be way more consistent now. We're back. And I'm not going to push her too hard. I'm going to make sure that she's, but I'll prepare her and get her ready. You
can't really make me do anything I don't want to do.
That's true. That'll never happen ever again. But like moving across the country or whatever. But
no, not this one though. Just to clarify.
Yeah. But we're so grateful for every single one of you. So we are looking forward to more episodes, and we can't wait to also make sure that you comment and give us some things that you want to hear us talk about so that we can bring it up as much as possible. But we're grateful for every single one of you, and thank you for being here at Young, Dumb, and Love.